So I'd just like to welcome Charlotte to today's session. Welcome, Charlotte.
Hi.
Hi, Charlotte, and it's lovely to see you. I'm so excited just to catch up with you and see how you've been since your hypnotherapy session. I know that you've had some great results, and yeah, really excited just to catch up with you. If anybody doesn't or isn't aware what emetophobia is, just want to just tell everyone a bit about that and how it affected you.
So emetophobia is basically kind of the fear of vomit or being sick yourself. I think it's not just so you could maybe be scared of someone else being sick, or your emetophobia could be you're not bothered if someone else is sick as long as you don't get sick. But it's not just the worst thing that people say to me is when I tell them about it is they go, oh, no one likes sick. And I'm like, yeah, but it's not just that. It's like it's very, very crippling. Like to the point that when my daughter would get stomach bugs, which obviously kids pick that up, I would send her to her dad's and I couldn't be there to support her. I would have full-on panic attacks. My partner had a stomach bug a couple of weeks ago and I slept on the couch for 4 nights. I didn't go near him. I
Mm.
couldn't support him and I was petrified every stomach gurgle that I had or any kind of twinge of anything in my stomach. I was like, it's going to happen. And I was like mentally trying to prepare myself for it. I ended up on anti-anxiety medication and I asked the doctor to prescribe me anti-sickness, which I would just take if I had if I'd thought of anyone being sick that day. I was like, maybe that means I'm going to catch a bug. So I would take an anti-sickness tablet on a night which I didn't need to take.
Yeah.
And then that would make me drowsy and I'd fall asleep. And it was like I was becoming not like they're not addictive, but I was getting into that routine of I can't go to sleep unless I take this medication because if I take this medication, I won't wake up sick. So and it was like it was the only way I could shut off is I've taken medication, my body isn't going to let me be sick, I'll be okay. And
Mm-hmm.
it was like crippling, like really, really debilitating. I didn't take my daughter to soft play. If there was a stomach bug going around the nursery, I would keep her off for like the entire time and I would miss time off work because I couldn't go. Um, so yeah, it was really getting in the way of stuff. But interestingly enough, I wasn't scared of if I went out for a drink
Yeah.
and you know when you drink too much and you feel like you need to be sick, that didn't scare me because I knew that I wasn't sick.
Yeah, you wasn't
So
ill.
I could make myself sick on a night out. It would still kind of, I'd be like, oh, I don't want to do this, but then I would actually manage to go and do that and feel better afterwards. And on a night out, I would think, right, I don't feel great, I'm gonna go be sick, and that wouldn't bother me.
Mm.
Or if somebody was drunk near me, like I would look away if they were being sick because, like everyone says, no one likes sick, and you don't want to look at that. But I wouldn't go home and panic because they're drunk, they're not poorly, I can't catch that.
Yeah.
And I think when I was making myself sick when I was drunk, I was in control of my own that I was controlling that.
Yeah.
Whereas when you stomach bug or food poisoning or anything like that, it is totally out of your control. You don't know when it's going to stop. You can't stop it. You know, and it's just horrendous. And it was that kind of the stomach bug and the food poisoning that I was living in so much fear of,
Wow.
not necessarily just vomit. So it's a big wide range of a phobia.
So it sounds just so overwhelming, so intense. And obviously this has affected you as a mum. How did this affect you, let's say before you had children? When did you first notice this fear of sick?
So I noticed it when I was about 12, because I mean I hadn't been poorly in a while. I think maybe 12, 13, I hadn't been unwell in a while. And my brother got really sick in the night and we shared a room at the time. And I remember being like, oh, okay, so he's eating something. Well, you know, I hope he's okay. And mum will sort that. And then all through the night for like, well, there was 24 hours, he was just constantly sick. And I literally was crying to my mum, being like, "You can't make me sleep in the room with him." And my mum was like, "Where the hell has this come from?
Yeah.
Like, what's the matter with you?" And I remember being, "I don't know, but don't make me sleep in the room with him, please." And I begged her and begged her to let me sleep on the couch. So I slept on the couch for a week. My mum could not get me back in that room to the point that he then got sick again a week later. And it turns out, you know, he just had a really low immune system at that
Right.
time because he'd had a range of illnesses. He was fine, but just kept catching stuff. And because he kept catching stuff, it got to a point where my mum had to split us up and I had to get my own room
Mm.
because I literally put my brother in the box room, bless him, because I literally was just, I was like, I can't cope with this. He's going to get sick. He's going to make me sick. But I didn't know where it came from. My mum had no idea where it came from. And then it just intensified after that. And I would usually get a stomach bug maybe once every 3 years.
Yeah.
And as it was coming up to like a 3-year mark, I'd be like, oh my God, I'm going to get sick because it's been 3 years, and it's usually every 3 years. And I would watch what I eat, and I lost loads of weight because I was like not eating properly in case I got sick. And my mum even said, like, I have no idea where this has came from, but I noticed it around that time.
Right, okay. And it was a fear of everything to do with sick, that the smell, the noise, all of those things, just that being unaware of where that it came from. And I know that when originally I spoke to you, and anybody that's listening to this that is unaware of this phobia, phobias are so intense, and you were struggling with panic attacks, and I've helped other clients that have also struggled with panic attacks, with phobias of spiders. But it's irrelevant what the phobia is. The fact of the matter is that you've taken on a story at some point in your life, you'd held on to this, and you'd made this into like a Hollywood blockbuster in your mind, and your mind had held on to it. And basically your mind is basically trying to protect you. It's trying to remind you, but rather than this reminding you every now and again, it was literally just there. It was the first thing that you kind of saw in terms of that being able to protect yourself. So when you first came to me, I know that you was really, really struggling, and obviously you got a small child, and you'd said, hadn't you, that your partner had been ill, your daughter had been ill. And if you just want to tell that story of what happened with your partner when he was being ill in that moment.
Yeah, so well, my daughter had gotten sick like a couple of days before, and she'd been fine, and then she'd thrown up all over the front room. And my daughter has like speech delay and other sensory issues. She's got autism. She's getting diagnosed with ADHD. She couldn't communicate with me that she was going to be sick, and she didn't understand when I was like asking her to like run to the toilet. She didn't get that, so it just went everywhere. And I remember I just froze, and she was calling for me, and I could not move my legs to go up to her because I was petrified. So I ran in the kitchen, I dug out like an old mask, I threw this mask on, these gloves on, and I rang my dad, like screaming, crying down the phone. And he knew. He just went, has she been sick? And I was like, yeah, I can't. So he came straight away. I rang her dad, and me and her dad don't get on very well at all.
Yeah.
But I rang him, and when he heard that I was in that state, he was like, has she been sick? Does she need to come over? Because it's like clockwork. Every time she's sick, I rang one of them and was like, I can't do this.
Yeah.
And it broke my heart in that moment was my daughter. She stopped calling for me, and before I'd even rang her dad, she went, let's go to daddy's, because she knew, and I'd put that in her head, that whenever she's sick, she goes to dad's. And I was like, that's really bad. That's really, she's so young, and she already knows mum can't cope with this. And I didn't want that. I want to be able to hold her hair back. I want to be able to comfort her and give her cuddles, because that's all they want when they're poorly.
Absolutely.
And I ended up staying up until 2 o'clock in the morning, disinfecting the house. I made my dad clean up the sick when he came to pick up my daughter, and I spent literally till 2-3 in the morning disinfecting the house. I didn't get any sleep. And then on the Sunday, this was on the Wednesday, on the Sunday night, my partner complained of a bad stomach, which panicked me a little bit, but he doesn't really get sick. So I was like, I'll be all right. And he threw up so like violently as we were going to sleep. And while he was being sick, he texted me, and I expected it to be like, can I have some water, or can you bring me a cold flannel? And he texted me going, it's going to be okay, babe, calm down, because he knew how bad. And I was on the floor shaking, screaming, crying, like freaking out, and I couldn't do anything for him. And I took a duvet and I slept downstairs for the rest of the week. I didn't kiss him, I didn't go near him. When he was better, and he felt better and he was fine, he was back to work, I still wouldn't sit next to him on the couch, hold his hand or anything, because I was Googling, how long is it contagious for? And my house has never been cleaner, because I've never disinfected so much in my life. And I couldn't be a mum, and I couldn't be a partner, because I just was so unbelievably petrified.
Sure. And I think it's in that moment that you reached out to me, we made contact, and we obviously arranged that appointment. Obviously I'd had a chat with you, and I'd explain what I can do to help in terms of help. How did you think that this session was going to go? What was your belief when you agreed to have this session with me?
honestly, I mean, I knew I wasn't going to be like fixed overnight, and
Yeah.
I didn't expect that. But I went in with a very open mind.
Mm.
So my close friends and family that I said I've booked this in, some of them were like, "Oh, okay,"
Yeah.
like, "Well, you're getting hypnotized," and it annoyed me because I'm a very open-minded person, and I was like, to me, I have tried everything.
Mm.
I've tried the medications, I've tried, mindful thinking, I've tried books, I've tried everything I could Google to think of. I've joined support groups and just nothing helped me. And I was like, I can't live like this.
Yeah.
So I just knew I needed to take a step in the right direction
Mm.
or just try anything.
Just try.
Um,
Yeah. Because,
but I
because
just want, but I wanted to know where it came from because I had no idea. And I was really hoping that hypnotherapy would help me at least figure out where it had started. Because if I could I thought to myself, if I could figure out where it came from, maybe that's the root, the beginning point of kind of trying to get past it.
yeah. Yeah.
But I
And
had no idea.
that is one of those things that we look at in hypnotherapy. We look at regression, we look at lots of different things. So for anybody listening to this this recording, that the help that I gave Charlotte was with the emotional release. So as well as using things like regression, what this session does in terms of hypnotherapy is it allows Charlotte to let go of all those things that she's had pent up inside of her, and it releases those things, all those negative images, feelings, thoughts, emotions and sensations. And part of that, we looked at regression. And so within hypnosis, I was able to regress you back. How did that feel when I took you through that process of regression?
It was honestly, I was quite at the time when I was under hypnosis and we were talking about the doors and stuff like that. It was I felt safe because while under hypnosis, I still was aware that I was
Mm.
safe in my own house. I still was very aware that I was on a couch, you know what I mean? And I was doing this, but I was able to think so clearly that when you told me that, okay, right in front of you is this, without hesitation, it was there clear as day. Does that make, and I remember thinking like being really taken back by it, but also feeling like I've never felt safer.
Mm.
Like I just felt so calm and so like, okay, well, this is happening. We'll just go with this. And when, when you asked me to like, step in front of the number of when this had started,
Yeah.
the absolute pure disbelief that there I was in front of this door that said 7 on it when I had no memory. I don't even remember things from when I was 7. Do you know what I mean? So I just
Yeah.
remember thinking, this is really strange. But it wasn't scary. I expected it to be
Right.
scary. And I'd kind of prepared myself like, okay, maybe this is going to freak me out a little bit, and it didn't at all. I felt really, while I still felt like kind of like, oh my gosh, this is crazy.
Yeah.
I felt really safe and calm.
Yeah. And when you was regressed back to when you was age 7, I believe, was it your grandparent or something that was there that was ill, or was it yourself that was ill? I can't
It was
quite remember.
myself. It was at my granddad's house, which my mum now
Right.
lives in.
Yeah.
Um, and I hadn't like, but my granddad himself hadn't lived there since I was about 9 or 10.
Right.
So bearing in mind, my mum lives in that house now, so most of my memories are of what it looks like now.
Yeah.
When I could see myself, it was my granddad's old carpets and my granddad's old wallpaper and all the decor that I'd forgotten even existed.
Yeah.
The colour of the bathroom, this horrible pastel pink that I hated, that I totally forgot existed. And it was just right there in front of me, clear as day, stuff that I hadn't even remembered or
Yeah.
knew that I'd remembered.
And I think one of the things that comes up when we look at regression within hypnotherapy is we also can look at that memory, that painful memory. We can look at recent sensations. So one of the things that I'll often do with clients is I'll ask you to think of that memory. I should scan your body, feel any physical sensations, which you did, and we looked at that and release that. And then afterwards, when that was done, I asked you to go and meet with your 7-year-old self and just give her a hug, just go and talk to her, tell what she needed to hear, because often that's all the mind needs. Every new client that comes to me is like, what is wrong, what needs to happen? I've done this, I've done CBT, and the reel off a list of what's happened. But all that we need, not to struggle with our mental health, are two things: we need to feel safe and we need to feel loved. When any of those two things are put into jeopardy, that's when we struggle. So in that moment, you might not have felt safe, you might have wondered what the hell was going on, and your mind had held on to it. And phobias are created within seconds. So having recognised that's when the time at the start of that phobia, but having released all that emotion, afterwards, I thought what I'll do with Charlotte now. So what I'll do, we'll just see whereabouts you are in terms of that phobia. And because we'd had this conversation and because you'd explained what happened, just like you have now, about your daughter, that weekend with your partner, that panic attack, I knew there was no point at the very beginning of the session me saying, right, let's just see, let me just show you a little bit of video of somebody being sick. Let's see where you are on a scale of 0 to 10. I knew you'd freak out. So then what we did at the end of the session was I was able to show you a video of somebody being sick, and I can't remember the lady's name. There's a famous lady, isn't it? But she was being sick.
Something, yeah.
Yeah, she was being sick, but she wasn't just being a little bit sick. She was being like a full on.
Yeah.
And then the great thing about working in hypnotherapy is we can really use imagination to bring about these. So I kept making that noise if I was going to be sick to see what your reaction would be, and then was putting humor to that and making it really silly, because that's what the mind needs to associate it with. That actually it's okay, that there's nothing to be scared of. And then after that session, when you looked at that video, how did it feel when you was looking at that lady being sick and hearing her being sick?
I didn't panic. I didn't have, usually I'd look away, or I'd there's been times where something's came up my phone, I've thrown my phone across the room, like in just pure and I was able to sit there and I was able to watch it, knowing with the like attitude that, okay, but she's not right in front, like she's on a screen. Like this is not, I'm not in any danger here of catching anything, or it's not pleasant, like nobody likes it. Do you know what I mean? It's the same, it's like gore and stuff, nobody wants to sit there and watch stuff like that, but I was able to without like even being squeamish. I just was like, oh, that's not nice. Like, and my actual first thing was, I hope she's okay. Like, because that just doesn't seem very pleasant. But it wasn't kind of like, close my laptop screen, run away.
And it's remarkable that you've had this response in, like one session. I generally work with between 1 and 4 sessions, but I never know. And clients will ask me, how many sessions do I need? And it's not for me to say. Everyone brings something different, everyone reacts differently, but it's generally just 1 to 4 sessions. And lots of people can struggle with this for years, and they've tried maybe months in therapy, and just to think that, generally speaking, it's just a month that I need with somebody is amazing. But it's not me as an amazing therapist. The mind is so powerful, it really does hold on to this stuff. And I was really, when I read your message after that session, and I read that your daughter had been ill and you'd be able to sit with your daughter, I was over the moon, thinking that you could gift that to your daughter, because everyone wants that, don't they, to be able to be there when the kids need them. So what was that like for you when your daughter was ill after that? I think it was only a couple of days, wasn't it? Was it a day?
It was literally a couple of days later. She complained of a really big stomach, and she was like gagging. And I had a moment where I was like, oh my god, no, but it lasted like a second, and then I was able to go, wait, hang on, like, right, stop it, stop being daft. And I was able to sit with her, and I got a bucket, and I was like, right, and because obviously I've got to like talk quite slowly and simply to Willow, so I was like, right, okay, if you need to be sick, you can do it in here. And she was looking at me, and I was going, and I grabbed the bucket, and I went, and she was giggling at me, and she gave me the bucket again. I went, in here, and she just kind of put her head on me, and I was able to comfort her and give her a kiss on the head, and was like, right, okay, I'm prepared. It's here. The towels are down. The bucket's here. And I was able to comfort her and lie with her while she went to sleep, which I would not have been able to do if she'd have complained of a bad stomach. That had been it. I'd have been like, bye, go see your dad.
Oh, wonderful.
So that was really, I got quite emotional afterwards, because I was like, I just did that. Like, it seems like such a daft thing to anybody else, but it's a huge accomplishment for me.
Yeah. And what does your family think? Because obviously they're aware of this, your ex-partner's aware of this, they know that they need to come in and help you when obviously your daughter's ill. So what's their response been like? I'm really interested to hear what they've said.
Well, my mum as a joke, she would never do this deliberately, but she, as a joke to my dad, forgetting I was kind of in the room when I went to go visit, did something, and she like gagged. And then she turned to me and went, oh, I'm so sorry. And I was like, oh, sorry. And she just went, And then the look at her face and she went, "Buh?" Like, as a joke, and I was like, "What are you doing?" And she just went, "Tanya," like, she called for my dad and was like, "You seen this?" And so they were both sort of going, "Buh, buh," and I was like, "All right, guys, hilarious." Like, you know what I mean? But they thought it was really funny. And
Yeah.
my partner spent the entire week just randomly gagging in front of me, thinking it was funny as that I wasn't actually doing anything. I was just
Ah,
like, "What are you doing?" And he was going, "Ugh." I was like, whereas before I'd have been like, "Stop it, stop it, stop it, stop it," and just like I couldn't
ah.
cope with it because I was scared that people would joke about gagging and then make themselves sick. But no, I wasn't, and they were all like, they all thought it was brilliant, and then they took the mick out of me for the next week, just being like, "Hey, can you believe that you used to cry over bear?"
Yeah.
So
And that's the
we
thing,
went
is it?
very,
When somebody doesn't have that phobia, it feels like irrational to them because they've not got
yeah,
it, have they? They've not got it. And when you think about like spider phobia, you know, people like jumping onto a sofa to get rid of a teeny tiny money spider. And it's exactly the same, you know, it's exactly the same. It's just an outdated story. And now that you've had that help, and now that you've moved forward, you're not going to have to carry that with you. You'll be off to be around your family. You're going to, you know, you're going to feel better in yourself for that. And we had a little chat before we started recording. And now that this is something that is no longer an issue for you, you've mentioned that you'd like some help with your self-esteem. So just tell me a
yeah.
little bit about body confidence, what you feel that you need the help with.